It was a quiet night in London in 1971. No alarms, no broken windows, no signs of forced entry. But deep beneath Baker Street, a small crew of thieves had just pulled off one of the boldest bank heists in British history. And they weren't caught, not by security, not by police. They were caught by a man sitting at home, twiddling his radio dial. But the real twist? This crime may have uncovered a royal secret the British government has spent decades trying to bury. This is the story of the Baker Street Robbery, a real-life Sherlock Holmes heist. When most people finish reading The Red-Headed League, a classic Sherlock Holmes short story, they might smile, sip their tea, and turn out the light. But not Anthony Gavin. Where you or I saw fiction, Gavin saw something else. A manual, a playbook, a blueprint for how to rob a bank. So in 1971, inspired by Conan Doyle's tale of criminals tunneling beneath a bank, Gavin decided to give it a try. Not on the page, but in real life. The result? One of the most audacious heists the UK has ever seen. With millions of pounds in cash, jewelry, and secrets vanishing into thin air. And possibly the exposure of a royal scandal buried under layers of silence. But more on that later. Before Gavin could dig his way into a vault, he needed a bank. One with symbolism and weak spots. His choice was poetic. A branch of Lloyd's Bank located on the corner of Baker Street. The very street Sherlock Holmes called home. With the target chosen, Gavin assembled a crew, each with a role, each with a purpose. First up, Reginald Tucker, a used car salesman. His job? To gain access to the vault by renting a safety deposit box. Bank policy at the time allowed private vault visits, so Tucker used the opportunity to scope out the room. Of course, walking around with a tape measure would have looked suspicious. So instead, he used an umbrella, the span of his arms, and the spacing of the tiles on the floor, each exactly 23 centimeters, to gather the dimensions. Quietly, discreetly. Next, Thomas Stevens, also a used car salesman. Apparently, the trade was full of talent back then. His role? To procure the equipment they'd need to breach the vault floor. Benjamin Wolfe, the third member, leased a leather goods shop 2 doors down from the bank. That shop would serve as the staging area and the tunnel entrance. Then there was Bobby Mills, a lookout, who monitored rooftops and radio channels for any sign of trouble. And finally, the man with perhaps the most entertaining name, Mickey "Skinny" Gervais. Not to be confused with Ricky Gervais. Skinny helped manage logistics and assisted with tunneling. It's believed there were many more involved, but most of them have never been identified. One name often linked to the robbery, Brian Reeder, the same man later jailed for the infamous Hatton Garden heist. Reeder has always denied involvement, but many believe this was where he got his start. The tunnel needed to span over 12 meters, running beneath a fried chicken restaurant that stood between the shop and the bank. To save time, they kept it narrow, barely 40 centimeters wide at the entrance, even tighter at the exit. It was claustrophobic, dangerous, back-breaking work. Gavin later claimed he lost over 2 stone, more than 25 pounds, in the month it took to dig it. Once they reached the vault, there was one final obstacle: the floor. A meter-thick slab of reinforced concrete. That's where Thomas Stevens came in. First, they tried using an industrial jack that could exert 100 tons of force. It didn't work. The jack buried itself into the tunnel floor. Next, they brought in a thermic lance, a high-temperature tool capable of cutting through steel using oxygen and heat. Basically, a real-life lightsaber. Still no luck. Finally, they turned to something they'd hoped to avoid: explosives. Gelinite. To mask the noise, they timed the blasts with traffic passing above. It worked. After a couple of detonations, they were in. Up to this point, the operation was smooth, precise, silent. But then came the mistake, a simple oversight with massive consequences. The gang had been communicating via walkie-talkies. It seemed efficient, but it also made them vulnerable. Enter Robert Rowlands. An amateur radio enthusiast, Rowlands was at home, trying to tune in to Radio Luxembourg, when he stumbled onto something strange: men, discussing explosives, vaults, and tunnels. At first, he thought it was a radio drama, but soon it became clear. He was listening to a real-time bank robbery. He called the police. They didn't believe him, told him to stop wasting their time. So, Rowlands recorded the conversation and called again. This time, he reached Scotland Yard. Now, they were listening. The Flying Squad, a unit of the Met Police that investigates serious organized crime, rushed to Rowlands' home. Together, they listened, as the thieves argued about whether to take a break or keep digging. But there was a problem. The gang never once said which bank they were robbing. With no address, police were forced to check every bank in the area, all 750 of them. At 7:49, nothing. At 1, the Lloyd's Bank on Baker Street, a group of men were in the middle of the biggest heist in British history. The police arrived, but the vault was sealed with a time lock. Rather than wait, they assumed nothing was wrong and left. Unbelievably, the thieves were likely still inside when officers were just meters away. By the time the bank reopened, the vault had been gutted. 268 safety deposit boxes were emptied. Jewelry, cash, bonds, priceless heirlooms, gone. Total losses were estimated at around £3 million. Over £40 million in today's money. On the wall, scrawled in paint, the gang left a message. Let's see how Sherlock Holmes solves this one. But arrogance often leads to mistakes. Police soon traced the leather goods shop used by the gang and discovered the tunnel. That shop had been leased by Benjamin Wolfe, who had made a critical error. He signed the paperwork using his real name. He was arrested, along with Anthony Gavin, Thomas Stevens, and Reginald Tucker. Each received 12 years in prison, except Wolfe, who received 8 due to his age. Only £231,000 of the stolen money was ever recovered. The rest, along with several unidentified gang members, simply vanished. And now, we return to the mystery teased at the start. The rumor of a royal scandal. Shortly after the robbery, whispers began to surface. One of the safety deposit boxes allegedly held compromising photographs of Princess Margaret, the Queen's sister, taken on a Caribbean island with actor John Bindon, a man with known ties to the criminal underworld. Such a relationship would have been explosive news, damaging to the monarchy. Some believe the government issued a media blackout to bury the story, that MI5 put a gag order in place, and that the sudden silence from the press wasn't coincidence, it was deliberate. To this day, we don't know what was in those boxes. We don't know what the gang saw, or what they may have taken beyond cash and jewels. In 2013, most of the case files were made public, but 800 pages were withheld. Those documents are scheduled to be released in 2071, a full century after the crime. Closing, maybe we'll never know what really happened in that vault. Maybe the rumors are just that, rumors. Or maybe, buried in a dusty government archive, is the truth about a royal scandal hidden beneath Baker Street. Until then, we're left with a story that feels like fiction, but was all too real. And who knows? Maybe one day someone will find that missing thermic lance and go looking for answers themselves. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, give it a like, share it with friends, and subscribe for more true crime and hidden history. Got your own theory about what really happened in that vault? Drop it in the comments. We'd love to hear it.